I'm back. Hello everybody, how's it going? It's been a long time since I've been able to talk to you guys. So, where have I been? Well, I just graduated from college. I started a full-time job. I haven't really had a lot of time to dedicate to the whole YouTube thing. But I'm here now. I got a new video for you guys, and I have another new video coming relatively soon because I've been able to really focus on my robots. So, without further ado, let's get into the topic of this video. Vindicator Mark III. Yes, indeed, folks. I have finally updated my favorite lifter, Vindicator, into what I believe to be his final form. This is the third version of him. Now, before I get into what's new with Vindicator, let's take a trip down memory lane, and I can show you a little retrospective of where Vindicator got his start, how he came into the version that you all are probably familiar with, and how and why I turned him into this new version here. So, Vindicator was built in the fall of 2017, and the idea was to make a forward-hinged flipper in the same way of Firestorm's design. I was always a big fan of his design, how effective the whole scooping under robots and throwing them forward thing worked. I liked it a lot more than a flip. Well, I mean, like a traditional flipper with CO2 isn't really doable with an ant weight, so I figured that a forward hinge lifter would be better than a lifter that went this way. At least for an ant weight, you could get a lot more done. It'd be a lot easier to flip a robot completely over. So that was the idea that I had when I was building him. The first version of Vindicator was made of mainly Lexan, and it looked pretty ugly. So my initial idea for making a forward hinged flipper is the same concept that I have with the original Vindicator, the Vindicator that I have today, and that is that there is a servo with an arm attached to it, and the whole idea is that this servo pops out this arm and it lifts up this little piece of plastic, which is like the platform for the lifting mechanism. So that was the original thought process of the design, and it stayed that way from the very beginning. The first lifter didn't work very well, though. It didn't go past 90 degrees, and it couldn't self-right him. And that was a big thing too, because like number one thing when you're fighting is you want a robot that can self-right himself. So when I was building Vindicator, I realized that this version that I had created was not going to be the final version. My whole goal was to get one that had a better range of motion, so the lifter sat flush. You'll see in the video when he's moving, the lifter doesn't sit flush, and it also doesn't lift far enough to flip a robot completely over or to self-right him. So I knew that I was going to have to fix that eventually. So, I mean, this was getting started, but I mean, there was obviously going to be some modifications that were going to be made. So it was these problems that I looked to rectify in the newer versions of Vindicator. For the second version of Vindicator, I changed the materials of the chassis from Lexan to UHMW for the wedge and titanium around the sides. This made the chassis stronger and lighter as well because the titanium was way lighter than the Lexan. And I also changed out the servo to have a greater range of motion. This made it so the arm would finally sit flush with the chassis and it could finally self-right itself. This second version of Vindicator was way better than the original one, and he stayed in this form for a very long time. I made some small changes along the way. The main one was I replaced the servo again with a smaller one that had 360 degree movement. This made the arm easier to activate because it was on a different channel, as well as it moving faster. So the whole idea with that was the arm still worked pretty much the same way, but in terms of a combat perspective, I'd be able to move the stick faster, the arm would move faster, the range of motion would be better. It would have made it an overall better combat robot. And I think that I'm glad that I went that way because the arm can move all the way out like that, like you're tipping someone over with that, and it moves so much faster. It was overall just a good choice that really made Vindicator even better. But there were a lot of things about the Vindicator design that I didn't like. The main thing I didn't like was the foam tires because he didn't get much traction as I wanted to when he would get underneath robots. And also the front scoop was made of a flimsy piece of metal that would always bend. I had to do that because he was so close to the weight limit. What I wanted to do was use the same aluminum that I use on Fatal Deviation's dustpan design, but to make a full wedge I would have gone over the 1 pound weight limit, so I wasn't able to do it. So instead I used this stuff here. Now, to tell you the truth, I honestly do not know what material this is because I found all of this on the road while I was taking a walk with my dog and my dad. These were just sitting on the sidewalk, and my genius brain was like, hey, why don't I take these home and I could use it for my robot? And that's exactly what I did. I made a scoop out of it. So that is how that happened. But as you can see, it's very flimsy, like very, very flimsy. So it would hit something, like say it hits the wall, or it hits against the wall, and then it just gets bent. So it was not viable. The whole reason I used it was because it made the weight limit. So my two goals with this new version of Vindicator was to get the foam tires off, replace it with the Battlebots rubber wheels, and have the front scoop be a bit more durable. So the first thing that I thought was to do exactly what I did with Velocity. Cut the edges off and chamfer it down so it kind of comes to a bit of a point. It's like a, what shape is that? It's a pentagon, like kind of like home plate, almost a little bit, but not really. So basically, as you can see, like this is where the original dimensions went, and then it chamfers down here. Now, originally I was trying to modify the original base, but it kind of didn't work. So I had to make a completely new chassis from the ground up. So that took a little more time, but eventually I was able to build it up, and it ended up looking pretty sharp, if I do say so myself. So we have rebuilt a Vindicator chassis after the failed attempt of doing this. So now we're going to transplant all this stuff here, all the electronics that are here. So now all the electronics should pop out. Yep. All right. So that is the brains of Vindicator. All right. And now we're just going to transplant it all right in here. Okay. So that is going to work a little mildly. Yeah, that's about what I expected. It's going to fit, but this is too long. I'm going to have to cut that down. But once I do that, I should be okay. I need to lock it down first. So, and like I said, the best part was that because I was able to shave off weight in the chassis, I was able to put on these nice rubber wheels instead, and this little aluminum bit here is way better for getting underneath opponents. So what I'm left with is a pretty solid version of Vindicator that I don't think I'm going to be changing. I think this is pretty much the final form of Vindicator. The only thing, because I'm such a perfectionist, the only thing I don't really like is you can see the big gaps here with the lifter. It's not as clean and as flush as Vindicator version 2, but I will happily take that with the rubber wheels and this front end. So I will happily take that. The insides as well got a bit of a overhaul. You can see I kind of zip tied all the electronics in there, so they're not going anywhere. You got the battery over here, you got the servo over there, all the speed controllers. You see there's 2 zip ties there. So everything is nice and compact and like in place. All the wires are good. That's Vindicator version 3. So this isn't going to be a very long video. I just want to show you guys what I've been up to. There's going to be one more video that I'm going to be recording and editing soon. So stay tuned for that. It's an update on my, I guess you could say he's my oldest active robot now, Nicotine Lips. I updated him, and it's probably one of the biggest overhauls that I've ever done with a robot. So stay tuned for that. I think you're really going to like it. I've been Lampini, and thank you again for watching one of my robot building videos. Peace out.